everything from Dragon Age Veilguard looks absolutely incredible so far. There is one issue that I kind of want to talk about that could be more of just a me thing, but I'll get to that in a second. I want to go through first the IGN hands-on preview that they did a few days ago and put out like a 12 to 15 minute video of a lot of different gameplay. Now, before I get into all of the things that are seemingly very promising about this game, I want to talk about one glaring issue that I personally am seeing with this game so far, and it's the graphics style that they have implemented in Dragon Age Veilguard. There's something so cartoony and so kid-friendly about it that just really rubs me the wrong way when you go back and look at a game like Dragon Age Origins, and it's almost like a dark, fantasy, gritty, like, brutal game. There's a lot of, like, honestly kind of like horror elements in terms of, like, the darkspawn and different enemy varieties. But in this game, it looks very cartoony. It looks, like I mentioned, very kid-friendly. Like something is just off with the way that they are portraying the environment in this game. There are a lot of things that look really cool. There's just something wrong with the way that they did the characters, that they did the enemies, specifically the Darkspawn. The Darkspawn do not look scary. They do not look very menacing. There's something very off with their graphical style that they wanted to implement in Dragon Age Veilguard, at least versus the previous Dragon Age games that we have come to know and love over the years. Now, that's kind of the one glaring thing that I'm not super excited about, but obviously when I'm going to play the game, it might grow on me over time, and I might like a lot of the different redesigns of the different characters, enemies, etc. However, I want to go into what I am excited about that IGN did preview here, and they started off this by talking a lot about the exploration and how the game is going to be versus a game like Dragon Age Inquisition, which was very open world and open-ended. This game's going to be a little bit more on rails, however, it is going to have some open areas, and in a lot of these areas, you're going to have a lot of different routes for exploration, for different secrets within the map, etc. So it is going to be a little bit more curated experience in that way, but that's definitely not always a bad thing. It is going to be, they did mention, a little bit more similar to Dragon Age 2, which I was not a huge fan of Dragon Age 2, but in terms of the actual world designing going through the game, those definitely weren't the biggest issues with that game. But exploration aside, that's something that I do think is going to be relatively promising. It kind of seems more similar to a game like Black Myth Wukong that has some of those open-ended areas, but they're definitely not open world, but they have a lot of, side areas that you can explore as well. And then they go into the combat, and the combat is something that I wasn't initially excited for, but it's something that after I've seen it, it looks a lot better than what I initially thought that the combat was going to look like. Now, they definitely went more with a Dragon Age 2 style of combat, kind of a mix between that and Inquisition. There is still pausing in the combat where you can pause and use the different abilities you have in this big radial wheel, but that's all the pausing you're going to have. Other than that, it's pretty full action combat with some abilities, and then you can't control directly the different group members that you have with you, but you can kind of target them and give them different commands to go places, attack, etc. from everything that I've heard so far. So overall, the combat is looking really good. It does look pretty flashy. Again, the enemy variety we'll have to see in terms of the different bosses you fight, etc., if those are going to be very fun to fight. But in terms of what they have shown so far, I definitely think the combat is going to be one of the highlights of the game, and it's definitely going to be fun to create a lot of different builds. They showed off a huge skill tree that almost at a small glance looks like a very simplified version of like the Path of Exile tree. I don't want it to be that crazy, but it does look like there's going to be a lot of different builds, and that is all something that I'm very excited for, especially if they're going to be changing up the combat. I'm very happy that it looks like they're changing up in a way that looks very promising. And now we get into something that I genuinely think is going to be one of the most important things in the entire game, and that is the dialogue options, and if they are actually going to have an impact on the rest of the game and on the story of the game. This is something that when Baldur's Gate 3 came out, it broke everyone's expectations for how gaming studios can go about doing changes within the game based on your dialogue options and based on the choices that you have in the game. And this was something that I was very eager to see within this preview, to kind of see what we're going to be getting. And it looks like, from what they said, the mission by mission basis is going to be very varied up depending on the different options that you chose. And they did say that that is something that's going to happen and characters are going to react differently. There are also going to be approvals and disapprovals of your actions based on the different characters that you're around at any given time as well. They gave an example where they were actually talking to Solus, one of the biggest, antagonists in the game, and it says that you kind of traded jabs back and forth with him, and then obviously some people are going to approve and disapprove based on those choices, which I always think is really cool. Now, how much is that going to actually affect those relationships with the other characters? That remains to be seen. Now, in my opinion, these are the most important things. If you can get the combat right and the gameplay right, if you can get that different level design of the different areas pretty locked in, if you get that similar to something like God of War or something like Black Myth Wukong, you have a great game on your hands in terms of the gameplay and the level design in the different areas. Now, if you can also get the decision making correct, in terms of making the different choices in those dialogue options and that affecting the results of a certain mission that you're on or a certain quest that you're on or the ending of the game, and you have that replayability, these are all, in my opinion, the top 3 things that this game needs to get correct. Also, with the combat, you have all these different build opportunities with that skill tree, with different weapons, different armor options. You have the combat of the big radial menu and being able to tell your different party members to do certain things. Now, it's not obviously as in-depth with fully pausing and kind of doing like a top-down RPG type of style, but all of these things are looking very promising so far. Additionally, on top of all that, the world, aside from the kind of cartoony feel that I mentioned earlier in this video, the world does look beautiful. The different type of environments that they have shown so far in these different previews and in the trailers, they do look very inspired, they look beautiful, and the game does feel like it has a certain identity to the game, especially a very distinct identity to some of the older Dragon Age games, which to a lot of people could either be a very good or a very bad thing. And the last thing I really wanted to talk about really quickly was the hub area. They mentioned in this preview that it's going to be a very large portion of the player's game time in this hub area. This is where all the different players are going to have like their own houses. You can do, just different fun interactions with the characters in this hub area. I'm guessing this is kind of where you're going to be before you go out on a quest or an adventure in a certain zone in the game. So this is always very important. If you are spending 10, 15, 20% of your time in a game in one hub area before you go out, if you're changing your armor, if you have like a stash tab in there, you're talking to the different characters, getting different cutscenes with them, developing your relationships with them in terms of the approvals and disapprovals and them having a new cutscene based on those actions. If all of that is done in the hub needs to look and feel like a home for you when you're playing that game. And honestly, this one looks pretty good as of right now. So that's pretty much everything that IGN previewed for Dragon Age Veilguard. Now, I am still very hesitant about the art style for the game. It just, the Darkspawn, even Morgan, when she came out, the redesigns for these look very kid-friendly and cartoonish when I'm, very used to a dark fantasy, brutal, gritty, Dragon Age Origins style of game from Dragon Age. But I can't complain too much. It's definitely something that I know will probably grow on me over time. Something I might even grow to like, might even grow to love. We'll have to kind of see once the game comes out and once I actually sink a lot of time into it. But aside from that, I'm very excited for the other aspects and generally the most important aspects of the game, which is the combat, how they're kind of doing the world of the game. Obviously, it's not going to be open world, but I'm still very excited for a more curated experience with a lot of open side areas that you can still explore or do different things to reach some different secret areas. Stuff like that I really love in games. Now, the last thing here, if they can really, really, really nail the different choices you make in the game, and if those choices actually change up how quests are going to go or how the ending of the game is going to go or how the different characters are going to perceive and react to you, if they can get that down, which I know Bioware can do, but it's a very different Bioware team. If they can get all of that down, this is looking like a very, very, very good game to kind of round out the end of this year. If you guys are excited for Dragon Age Veilguard, please let me know by giving me a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel for more in terms of gaming news or even more Dragon Age Veilguard videos. I will definitely be posting more in the future as it's a game that I am greatly looking forward to. And then also leave a comment down below on what are the things you are excited for about this game, or if you're not excited at all, let me know down in the comments below and let me know why. So I appreciate you guys for watching. We're one away from 200 subscribers, so I'm very excited for that. Yeah, love you guys. Peace.